In Maya's cramped apartment, nestled deep within the labyrinthine alleyways of Brooklyn, the late afternoon calm shattered abruptly with the insistent ring of her cell phone. Faint streaks of sunset light pierced through the grimy window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Maya, hunched over her biology textbook, one of her endless attempts to escape the relentless grind of delivery work and pursue her dream of becoming a nurse, startled, looking up. She reached for the phone, barely registering the unknown number flickering on the screen. Usually, she'd ignore such calls, but an odd premonition urged her to answer. Hello? Her voice was a little hoarse, tinged with the exhaustion of a long day battling traffic and heavy packages. On the other end, a woman's voice, trembling and rushed, almost breathless, responded. Is this Maya Lopez? Grec volunteer? Maya frowned. Yes, it is. What's wrong? Her heart suddenly quickened a beat. She only volunteered at the Global Relief Emergency Center, GREC, on free evenings and weekends, mostly helping sort medical supplies and pack aid shipments. She had never received a direct, urgent call like this. Miss Lopez, this is Dr. Anya Sharma from GREC. We have a critical situation. We need your urgent help. Dr. Sharma's voice was so strained it sounded as if she was suppressing a sob. A shipment of medication, an extremely rare antitoxin, has been misrouted. At that, a cold current ran down Maya's spine. Misrouted? What do you mean? She pushed her textbook aside, her full attention now gripped by the call. It was supposed to go to a hospital in Iquitos, Peru, for a severely snake-bitten patient, Dr. Sharma explained, each word heavy with urgency. But somehow, due to a system error or an inexplicable mix-up in the shipping warehouse, it was sent to an address in New York. Maya felt her stomach clench. What address? The Sterling Tower, Dr. Sharma whispered, her voice now a hushed gasp of desperation. The Sterling Corporation headquarters. Maya couldn't help but gasp herself. The Sterling Tower. The name echoed in her mind like an alarm bell. It was a symbol of immense wealth and power, a towering monolith of glass and steel in the heart of Manhattan, a place people like her only glimpsed from afar. For a life-saving medication, worth a fortune, and more importantly, a human life, to get lost in such a place was unimaginable. No way, Maya murmured, getting up from her seat, a restless energy building within her. How could that happen? We don't know, Dr. Sharma almost shouted. We're investigating, but what's crucial now is getting it back. That patient, a 7-year-old child, won't survive without it within the next few hours. Time is running out. The pressure weighed heavily on Maya. She was just a part-time delivery driver, accustomed to handling mundane packages like takeout food or office documents. But now, she held information about a life in peril. What do you want me to do? She asked, her voice firmer than she expected. I've tried everything, Dr. Sharma said, sounding utterly desperate. Calling the Sterling Tower, explaining the situation, but they're too busy. Security, reception, they don't understand the urgency. They just keep saying I need to submit a written request or go through proper delivery channels. She let out a frustrated sigh. I told them this is a global emergency, a life-saving medication, but they just respond with internal rules and regulations. Dr. Sharma's helplessness ignited a surge of indignation in Maya. The people at the Sterling Tower, likely sitting in their luxurious air-conditioned offices, were indifferent to a life hanging in the balance, simply because of their rigid protocols. Ms. Lopez, you're the only one I can think of right now, Dr. Sharma pleaded, her voice tinged with hope. You have delivery experience. You understand the shipping system. More importantly, you're one of our volunteers. You understand Grec's mission. That package, it was rerouted to a transfer point near the Sterling Tower. I've relabeled it with a special code, but it still looks like a very ordinary package. A small, unassuming package, yet it carries immense significance, Maya repeated, feeling the weight of the responsibility settle on her shoulders. She pictured the 7-year-old child in Peru, struggling for life, their only hope residing in a cardboard box somewhere in a New York skyscraper. Exactly, Dr. Sharma confirmed. Can you go to that transfer point now? Pick up the package and somehow get it into the Sterling Tower? Directly to Mr. Richard Sterling. He's the only one who might grasp its importance, or at least has enough authority to cut through the bureaucracy. This mission was unlike anything Maya had ever undertaken. It stretched beyond the scope of her regular delivery job, far beyond what she thought she was capable of as a volunteer. It required boldness, improvisation, and a touch of recklessness. But looking into the imagined eyes of that child, she knew she couldn't refuse. "Yes," Maya said, her voice filled with resolve. "I'll go now." "Thank you, Miss Lopez." "God bless you," Dr. Sharma said, evident relief in her tone. Maya hung up, her heart pounding in her chest. She quickly changed, opting for her familiar delivery uniform. It brought a sense of normalcy and a thin veneer of legitimacy, though she knew it wouldn't do much against the Sterling Tower's security. She checked her wallet, locked her apartment door, and dashed out. The streetlights had already begun to flicker on, transforming the familiar streets into a shimmering, illuminated maze. She hurried down the stairs, running frantically through the bustling avenues. This impossible mission, she told herself, would redefine how she saw herself and her purpose. She was no longer just a delivery person. Today, she was a bearer of hope, a key to a life. And she wouldn't let any rules or barriers stand in her way. The taxi hurtled through the densely packed streets of Manhattan, each congested block a fresh cut into Maya's dwindling patience. She restlessly tapped her fingers against her thigh, eyes glued to her phone screen, double-checking the package information and the address. The familiar avenue, usually a blur of vibrant storefronts and neon signs, now seemed alien, shrouded in a haze of urgency. She pictured the 7-year-old in Lima, every passing second a life-or-death struggle, and that thought extinguished any fear or hesitation within her. As the cab turned onto Fifth Avenue, the Sterling Tower loomed into view, a monolithic titan against the darkening sky. It wasn't just a building. It was an icon, a monument of glass and steel reflecting the city lights like a colossal metal beast. The glittering lights from its highest floors seemed to mock Maya's crude attempts. This wasn't her usual delivery route. No dilapidated apartment buildings or quaint office spaces. This was an entirely different world, guarded by an invisible barrier of exclusivity and protocol. The taxi pulled to a stop at the main entrance, where other luxury vehicles discharged their impeccably dressed occupants in a steady stream. Maya paid the fare, clutching the package in her hand, feeling as though it had suddenly doubled in weight. As she stepped onto the marble-tiled pavement, the crisp October night air carried a faint scent of expensive perfume and opulence. She took a deep breath, acutely aware of the stark contrast between her worn uniform and the sharp suits, the sparkling evening gowns gliding past her. No sooner had she approached the grand, gleaming brass revolving doors than a man in a smart but stern security uniform intercepted her. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and his gaze swept over her coldly, lingering on the box in her hand. "Ma'am, this is the main entrance. For deliveries, you'll need to use the loading dock around the back," he stated, his tone polite but unyielding. Maya tried to keep her voice even. "I understand, but this package is very urgent. It's life-saving medication. There's a child waiting for it." She held the package out slightly, trying to show him the handwritten label. "Grec, urgent." The guard's eyes narrowed, perhaps having heard enough excuses for violating building regulations. "Ma'am, all packages must go through our receiving department at the loading dock for security screening and logging. Procedure is procedure. You cannot bring anything into the main lobby without special authorization and an appointment." Maya felt a wave of frustration wash over her. "But there's no time for that. I've already tried calling, and no one answers. I need to speak to Mr. Richard Sterling immediately." The guard gave a slight, weary, and familiar smirk. "Mr. Sterling does not accept personal deliveries, ma'am. If you have an urgent matter, you should follow proper channels." He gestured towards a narrow alley beside the building, where a small sign read, "Delivery Entrance." She fought desperately to maintain her composure. "Look, this isn't a normal package. This is an antitoxin. If it doesn't get delivered in the next few hours, a child will die." She looked him straight in the eyes, trying to convey the gravity of the situation. Still, the guard's gaze remained unyielding. He was trained to be firm, to protect the Sterling Tower's exclusivity from even the slightest intrusion. To him, Maya was just another delivery person trying to cut corners. "I apologize, ma'am. Rules are rules. If you're not willing to use the loading dock, I'll have to ask you to leave the premises." His voice now carried a subtle note of threat. Maya glanced around. The people entering and exiting the main lobby seemed oblivious to this small confrontation. They were men and women in expensive attire, their conversations revolving around high-stakes deals and upcoming social events. Their world felt a million miles away from Maya's, where a simple package could mean the difference between life and death. She took a step back, feeling a surge of powerlessness and anger. Fine, she gritted out. I'll go to the loading dock. But in her gut, she already knew that would only waste precious time. If the people at the Sterling Tower wouldn't listen over the phone, navigating a formal bureaucratic delivery process would undoubtedly be another dead end. She turned on her heel, walking down the narrow alley the guard had indicated. The alley was dark, smelling of garbage and grease, a stark contrast to the gleaming facade of the building. At its end was a heavy metal door, marked by a small sign that read, "Receiving Department." She pushed it open, a loud creak echoing in the quiet space. Inside, it wasn't a grand reception area, but a small, cluttered room filled with cardboard boxes and hand trucks. A balding, middle-aged man sat behind a grimy counter, his eyes fixed on an old computer monitor. He didn't look up as Maya entered. "I have an urgent package for Mr. Richard Sterling," Maya said, placing the box on the counter. The man yawned, without tearing his gaze from the screen. "Just put it over there. Everything has to be inspected and logged. It'll take a while." "No, you don't understand," Maya insisted, her voice tinged with desperation. "This is life-saving medication. It needs to be delivered immediately. This is a Grec emergency." Finally, he looked up, his expression one of utter indifference. "Look, lady, I hear those stories all day. Everyone's package is urgent. We have a process. We'll get to it when we get to it." He pushed Maya's package aside, onto a growing pile of other waiting parcels, some of which looked like they'd been there for quite some time. Maya felt a fierce surge of indignation. She couldn't accept this. She glanced at the old wall clock. Time was slipping away, each tick a precious moment that Child was losing. These people, with their indifference and rigid adherence to rules, were indirectly pushing a life to the brink. In that moment, a flash of realization hit her. If she couldn't follow the rules, she'd have to break them. She'd have to find another way. She couldn't wait. She couldn't allow this package to be buried in bureaucratic red tape. She would have to do something audacious, something she never thought she'd do. Maya took a deep breath, gathering her courage. She stared at the package on the counter, then at the door leading back towards the main lobby. She knew she was about to do something foolish, something that could get her into serious trouble. But her conscience wouldn't allow her to give up. She would have to face Mrs. Albright, with the security guard, with the entire indifferent edifice of this powerful fortress. She turned, swiftly exiting the receiving room, leaving the man still glued to his screen. She knew she would have to find another way, another entrance to the main lobby. She would have to deliver this package to Mr. Richard Sterling herself, against all odds. As Maya returned to the main entrance of the Sterling Tower, she was no longer the timid delivery girl who had been turned away just minutes earlier. Frustration and indignation had forged her into something more resilient, more stubborn. She no longer felt intimidated by the building's opulence or the stern demeanor of its guardians. Instead, a fiery resolve burned within her chest, fueled by the image of a child clinging to life thousands of miles away. She bypassed the designated delivery entrance, striding directly towards the gleaming brass revolving doors where she had previously been stopped. The same security guard who had dismissed her still stood there, his large frame as unyielding as a statue. When he saw Maya return, a flicker of annoyance crossed his face. He raised a hand, preparing to repeat his warning. "Ma'am, I already told you," he began, his tone somewhat exasperated. But Maya cut him off. "I know what you told me, and I told you this is an emergency. I don't have time to play by your rules." Her voice echoed in the grand lobby, drawing the attention of a few people entering or exiting. She walked straight towards him, her gaze fixed on his, unwavering. Suddenly, a sharp voice cut through the air. "I told you. No entry." It was Penelope Albright, who had appeared seemingly out of nowhere, her face taut with displeasure. She had just emerged from a nearby conference room, followed by several other board members whose meeting had just concluded. Her presence only intensified the already palpable tension. She pointed a slender, diamond-adorned finger at Maya, as if she were a grave threat. "Did you not hear me?" Mrs. Albright continued, her voice usually used to command board meetings, now held a strident edge. "We have rules, and you are violating them. You are a delivery person. Nothing more, nothing less. Who do you think you are, brazenly waltzing in here?" Her cutting remarks drew the full attention of the entire board. Maya felt a surge of anger, but she knew she couldn't let it overwhelm her. She had to stay resolute. "I am carrying a package that can save a child's life," she declared, clutching the plain cardboard box. Crucially, it held a secret that none of the onlookers in the lobby could fathom. "There's an antitoxin in this box, and it needs to get to Peru immediately. Due to someone's mistake in your system, it was sent here by accident." Maya's words caused a few murmurs among the board members. Some frowned. Mrs. Albright, however, remained unfazed. "That is not our concern. We are not a post office. We are the Sterling Corporation. John, get her out of here immediately," she commanded the security guard, who had begun to advance slowly, cautiously towards Maya. Maya knew she had only this one chance. She needed to cut through the security cordon and reach someone with authority. Her gaze swept over the faces of the board, settling on one man who stood slightly apart, his expression surprisingly calm. It was Richard Sterling, the chairman and CEO of the Sterling Empire. He wasn't frowning like the others, nor did he have the indignant look of Mrs. Albright. He simply stood there, observing, his sharp eyes sweeping over Maya, then over the package in her hand. "Mr. Sterling," Maya called out, her voice filled with desperation but also hope. "You have to listen to me. This is a global emergency. This is Grek's medication." At the mention of Grek, a subtle shift flickered across Mr. Sterling's face. Something in his eyes changed, from detached observation to a spark of curiosity, almost recognition. He had seen that kind of unwavering determination elsewhere, in people who had nothing left to lose. Mrs. Albright, noticing Mr. Sterling's attention diverted, tried to reclaim it. "Richard, don't let her bother you with her wild stories. We have strict security protocols. John, do your job." But Mr. Sterling ignored her. He motioned for the security guard to hold back. "Let her through, John." Mrs. Albright gasped. "Richard, you can't do that. You're undermining security's authority and putting the entire building at risk." Her voice was sharp as a blade. Mr. Sterling still did not directly answer her. He stepped forward towards Maya, closing the distance between them. He showed no sign of anger or annoyance, only a focused calm. Maya stood tall, facing him, the box in her hand like a shield, a statement. "That package, young lady," Mr. Sterling said, his voice deep and calm, a stark contrast to Mrs. Albright's stridency. "Let me see it." With trembling hands, yet with unexpected steadfastness, Maya handed the package to him. She felt the eyes of everyone in the lobby on her, a moment of intense, hushed anticipation. Mr. Sterling took the box, felt its weight, then slowly opened the flap. Inside, nestled carefully in foam padding, was a small vial containing shimmering amber liquid. He read the label, his eyes narrowing as he processed the information. "Antitoxin. From Grek?" he murmured, his voice carrying a note of surprise and dawning recognition. In that instant, his face transformed. It wasn't an abrupt change, but a slow, unfolding shift, as a flood of memories washed over him. An old pain, a long-dormant fear, suddenly resurfaced. Mrs. Albright and the other board members continued to stare, baffled by the sudden shift in his demeanor. But for Maya, who witnessed the spark of understanding in his eyes, she knew she had succeeded. At least, for this stage. Mr. Sterling gripped the antitoxin vial tightly in his hand, his gaze still fixed on it, as if it were a priceless treasure carrying a story only he could decipher. The air in the lobby grew thick, laden with curiosity and a sense of foreboding about the profound event that was about to unfold. As Richard Sterling gripped the small vial in his hand, the opulent main lobby of the Sterling Tower seemed to fade from his perception. The murmurs of the board, Mrs. Albright's shrill protests, and even Maya's defiant presence, all dissolved, giving way to a vivid, painful image from his past. 6 years ago, he remembered a sweltering summer afternoon in a remote village deep within the Amazon. The trip had been an attempt to reconnect with his daughter, Sarah, a biologist passionately studying rainforest ecosystems, and his 7-year-old granddaughter, Lily. Lily, with her cascade of golden hair and clear blue eyes, was the joy, the light in his otherwise austere life. She adored nature, especially the reptiles Sarah was researching. They were trekking deep in the jungle, Lily eagerly running ahead when Sarah's piercing scream echoed through the dense foliage. Sterling rushed forward, his heart seizing in his chest as he witnessed the horrifying scene. Lily lay on the ground, a small but vibrantly colored, highly venomous coral snake slithering away from her rapidly swelling ankle. Its venom spread quickly, and within minutes, Lily began to convulse, her lips turning a chilling blue. The village had no hospital, no doctors. The nearest medical outpost was hours away by car on treacherous, muddy roads, and they knew that time was a luxury they simply didn't possess. Sarah, a brilliant scientist, knew that only a specific, rare antivenom could save her daughter, and it was simply unavailable anywhere in the immediate vicinity. In an escalating panic, Sarah had contacted every medical organization she knew, every connection she had. Eventually, one name was mentioned repeatedly: the Global Relief Emergency Center, GREC. They were a nonprofit specializing in the emergency transport of medicines and medical supplies to the world's most remote, inaccessible regions. Sterling, with all his power and wealth, felt utterly helpless. Money couldn't buy time. His private jet couldn't land in the middle of a dense jungle. He had called government officials, diplomats, but all responded with empty promises and bureaucratic hurdles. But GREC was different. They didn't ask about money or status. They only asked about the necessary medication and the location. A small team of theirs, with just a single small plane and a dedicated crew of volunteers, began a race against death. He remembered the call from a GREC coordinator, their voice calm but resolute, assuring him they were doing everything they could. That night was the longest of his life. Lily was burning with fever, delirious, every breath a struggle. Sterling sat by her makeshift bed, clutching his granddaughter's tiny hand, feeling the cold dread constrict his heart. He had faced the greatest financial crises, the toughest negotiations, but nothing compared to the helplessness of watching his beloved granddaughter slip away. At dawn, when hope had nearly faded, the distant drone of a small aircraft engine vibrated through the air. It was the GREC plane. They had landed on a small clearing near the village, carrying a small, unassuming package that contained the world, the vial of antivenom. A GREC doctor administered the antitoxin to Lily. The effect wasn't instantaneous, but within hours her condition began to stabilize. The fever gradually receded, her breathing became steadier. Life had been returned to her. Sterling wept. He, the man of steel in the financial world, knelt beside his granddaughter's bed, hot tears streaming down his face. He swore then and there that he would never forget GREC, the organization that had prioritized human life above all rules and profits. He had made a large anonymous donation, ensuring they could continue their life-saving work. And now, 6 years later, the very name GREC and the sight of the amber antitoxin vial in Maya's hand had reawakened that searing memory. He looked at the vial, then at Maya, the delivery person standing there, defiant and hopeful. She knew nothing of his past, yet she was on the same mission, carrying the same kind of hope that GREC had once brought to him. Mrs. Albright's and the security department's indifference suddenly became repulsive in his eyes. They had almost prevented the saving of another life, simply because of their rigid rules and their lack of understanding. The old fear and gratitude mingled with a fresh surge of indignation. Sterling looked up, his gaze sweeping over Mrs. Albright and the other board members. His face no longer held its usual calm. Now, it bore an expression of stern resolve, almost coldness. He had stared death in the face, and he knew that no corporate rule could compare to the value of a single human life. He tightened his grip on the antitoxin vial, feeling its weight, not just its physical heft, but the immense weight of memories and responsibility. He had once been the powerless one, watching his loved one suffer. Now, he had the power to change the outcome. And he would. The silence in the Sterling Tower's grand lobby became heavy, almost suffocating. All eyes were fixed on Mr. Richard Sterling, who clutched the amber antitoxin vial in his hand. His face, usually composed and inscrutable, now bore a rare, stern gravity. Penelope Albright, who had confidently commanded the space mere minutes before, now stood rigid, her expression shifting from annoyance to bewilderment, then to a vague fear. The other board members mirrored her reactions, a mix of confusion and intense curiosity. Sterling took a deep breath, his gaze sweeping over each familiar face on the board, lingering slightly longer on Mrs. Albright. His voice, when it came, was not a furious roar, but a calm, chillingly sharp cadence. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "I believe we have witnessed a significant event here today, one that frankly has left me profoundly disappointed." Mrs. Albright attempted to regain her footing. "Richard, I don't understand. This young woman is causing a disturbance, breaking our security protocols." Sterling raised a hand, a decisive and undeniable gesture that cut her off mid-sentence. "Penelope, be silent. For once, you are profoundly mistaken." The words struck Mrs. Albright speechless. Sterling rarely spoke to her in such a tone, especially in front of the entire board. Several board members began to exchange nervous glances. Sterling turned to face the entire group. He held up the vial in his hand, the crystal chandeliers above reflecting glimmers of light off its surface. "This tiny object," he said, his voice dropping to a dangerously quiet pitch, "contains far more than you see. It contains a life. And it also contains a reminder for all of us about what truly matters." He paused, letting his words sink in. "6 years ago," he continued, his voice trembling slightly, revealing a rare vulnerability. "My granddaughter, Lily, was bitten by a snake in a research trip in the Amazon rainforest. The venom was incredibly potent. Local hospitals had no antidote. Time was running out. We tried every channel, every connection, every diplomatic measure. All failed." A soft murmur rippled through the group. The board members, who knew Sterling to be a private man who rarely shared personal details, began to listen with rapt attention. Mrs. Albright still stood, but her face had shifted from anger to stunned disbelief. "At a time when all hope seemed lost," Sterling continued, his voice now resonating through the grand lobby, "an organization intervened. An organization that didn't ask about money or procedure. They only asked about need. That organization was the Global Relief Emergency Center, GREC." As the name GREC was uttered, Maya felt an immense wave of relief wash over her. She knew she had placed her gamble correctly. They dispatched a small plane carrying this very type of antitoxin across thousands of perilous miles and administrative hurdles. They landed in a remote jungle clearing and administered the medication to my granddaughter. They saved her life, Sterling stated, his voice now deeper, carrying a hint of suppressed emotion. They saved Lily's life. A single tear tracked down his cheek. He made no effort to hide it. He turned to Maya, who still stood there, silently observing. "This young woman," he said, gesturing towards Maya, "she is doing the very same thing. She doesn't work for our company. She isn't obligated to follow our meaningless rules. She is a GREC volunteer, and she risked everything, her reputation, perhaps even her livelihood, to ensure this life-saving medication wasn't buried in our bureaucracy." Sterling looked directly into Mrs. Albright's eyes, his gaze now blazing with indignation. "And you, Penelope," he said, each word a cutting indictment. "You tried to stop her. You placed rigid corporate rules above a human life. You allowed the arrogance of this tower to blind you to compassion." Mrs. Albright stiffened. For the first time in Maya's memory, she looked utterly defeated. Her face was ashen, her lips pressed into a tight line. No rebuttal escaped her. "I never thought that one day," Sterling continued, his voice now echoing across the lobby. "This building, this company, would come so close to hindering such a noble humanitarian act. We have become a fortress of indifference, guarded by those who cannot see the bigger picture." He turned to face the entire board, who stood with bowed heads in shame. "We have learned a costly lesson today. That rules and procedures, while necessary, must never supersede the value of a human life. That compassion and understanding are our most valuable assets." Then, in a moment Maya would never forget, Richard Sterling, the most powerful man in that room, slowly knelt down before Maya. The gesture was not one of subservience, but of profound apology and genuine gratitude. It was an acknowledgement of true power, not of money or status, but of kindness and courage. Surprise rippled through the lobby. Instantly, as if guided by an invisible force, every member of the board, including a trembling Penelope Albright, also slowly knelt. Expensive suits and glittering evening gowns touched the cold marble floor. It was an unbelievable sight, a collective act of humility before a woman they had scorned just moments before. Their faces were stripped of arrogance. In its place was contrition, shame, and a newfound deep respect. Maya stood there, the empty box in her hands, her heart pounding. She could not believe what she was witnessing. She had come to deliver a package. She had done so much more. She had shaken the very foundations of an empire, not with violence or angry words, but with perseverance, compassion, and a story that had touched the heart of the most powerful man. She had completed her mission. More importantly, she had changed a few hearts, and perhaps an entire way of thinking. The silence that followed the collective genuflection in the Sterling Tower's grand lobby was profound, thick with a mixture of shock, awe, and a palpable sense of shame. The air, once crackling with tension, now hummed with the quiet weight of revelation. Richard Sterling, still on one knee, slowly rose, his gaze sweeping over the humbled faces of his board members, a silent testament to the raw power of empathy. Penelope Albright, her usually formidable posture now slumped, was the last to stand, her eyes downcast, unable to meet his gaze. Maya stood motionless, clutching the now empty cardboard box, feeling an overwhelming surge of emotions. Disbelief, relief, and a strange sense of vindication washed over her. She had come to deliver a package, and in doing so, had unexpectedly delivered a profound lesson. The immediate crisis was averted, but the implications of this extraordinary moment would undoubtedly ripple far beyond the polished marble walls of the Sterling Tower. Mr. Sterling turned to Maya, his expression softening from the sternness he had shown his board to one of deep respect and gratitude. "Ms. Lopez," he said, his voice gentle, "there are no words adequate to express my apologies for the way you were treated, nor my profound gratitude for your unwavering determination. You acted with courage and integrity, virtues that, clearly, some of us have forgotten." He glanced pointedly at Mrs. Albright, who flinched. "The antitoxin," Maya managed to say, her voice still a little shaky. "We need to ensure it gets to Peru immediately. The child." "It's already being handled," Mr. Sterling assured her, his hand reaching for his phone. Even before the board had knelt, the gravity of the situation, once recognized, had spurred him into action. He had already dispatched his personal executive assistant, a woman of formidable efficiency, to coordinate directly with Grek's global logistics team. "My team is now working directly with Grek. A private jet is being fueled as we speak, diverting from another Sterling Corporation mission to ensure this package reaches Lima without another moment's delay. It will be there within hours." Relief, pure and unadulterated, flooded through Maya. The thought of that little girl, now with a genuine chance at life, brought tears to her eyes. She hadn't failed. Mr. Sterling then turned to his assembled board, his voice regaining a touch of its customary authority, but now infused with a new, sober conviction. "As for all of you," he began, his gaze piercing, "this incident serves as a stark reminder of our true purpose. We are not just a corporation. We have the resources, the influence to do good in the world. And we have today been dangerously close to letting petty rules and arrogance overshadow our humanity." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Effective immediately," he announced, his voice firm, "we will be initiating a comprehensive review of our corporate social responsibility policies. Furthermore, I will personally oversee the establishment of a dedicated fund within the Sterling Foundation, specifically for emergency humanitarian aid, working in direct partnership with Grek. This fund will be substantial, and it will be perpetual." A ripple of murmured assent, tinged with a lingering discomfort, went through the board. Mrs. Albright, however, remained silent, her eyes fixed on the floor. Her empire of protocols had crumbled before her very eyes. Mr. Sterling then turned back to Maya, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Miss Lopez," he said, "I understand you volunteer for Grek, and you are, I believe, a delivery driver by profession." Maya nodded, a blush rising on her cheeks. "Yes, sir. I'm working my way through nursing school." A flicker of admiration crossed Mr. Sterling's features. "Nursing school? Commendable, given your demonstrable courage, resourcefulness, and your clear understanding of what truly matters. I have an offer for you." He gestured around the grand lobby. "The Sterling Corporation is always looking for individuals with exceptional character. We have a dedicated logistics and procurement division that works closely with our philanthropic initiatives, including our new partnership with Grek. It's a role that requires precision, quick thinking, and a global perspective." He paused, letting the weight of his offer hang in the air. "I'd like to offer you a full-time position within that division. a position that would not only provide you with a substantial salary, enough to pursue your nursing education without financial burden, but also allow you to directly contribute to the kind of humanitarian work you clearly believe in. You would be instrumental in ensuring that vital supplies reach those who need them most, cutting through the very bureaucracy that almost cost a child its life today. Maya's mind reeled. A full-time position at the Sterling Corporation? With a salary that would cover nursing school? It was an unimaginable opportunity, a lifeline tossed to her from a world she thought was entirely out of reach. Her current life involved endless hours on the road, scrimping and saving every penny, battling the city's relentless pace. This offer was a chance to integrate her passions, to build a future she only dreamed of. She looked at Mr. Sterling, at the humbled board members, at the gleaming, luxurious lobby. This place, which had initially been a symbol of indifference and cold rules, now represented a surprising turn of fate. "Mr. Sterling," she began, her voice barely a whisper, I don't know what to say." "Think about it, Ms. Lopez," he said, a faint, genuine smile touching his lips. "Consider it our way of atoning for our short-sightedness, and consider it an investment in someone who truly understands the meaning of service." He extended a hand towards her, not for a handshake, but as an open invitation. "The offer stands, and thank you again for reminding us of what we had forgotten." Maya took his hand, the firmness of his grip a stark contrast to the earlier fragility of his demeanor. The weight of the world, which had rested on her shoulders just moments before, began to lift. She had not only delivered a package, she had delivered a wake-up call, and in return, she had been offered a path to a future she had only dared to dream of. The grand lobby of the Sterling Tower, once a stage for intense confrontation, now settled into a hushed stillness that felt both surreal and profoundly meaningful. The last echoes of Richard Sterling's words, the image of the kneeling executives, lingered in Maya's mind like a vivid dream. She stood there, the weight of the offer still suspended in the air, a lifeline thrown from a world she had only glimpsed from a distance. The empty cardboard box, now a symbol of both her struggle and triumph, felt almost weightless in her hand. Her initial reaction was a whirlwind of disbelief. A full-time position at Sterling, with a salary that would cover nursing school? It was an escape hatch from a life of constant hustling, a direct path to the future she'd been meticulously, painstakingly building brick by brick. The city, with its relentless demands and endless bills, had always loomed large, threatening to swallow her aspirations whole. This offer wasn't just a job, it was freedom. Yet, a flicker of apprehension remained. The Sterling Tower, for all its newfound humility, represented everything she was instinctively wary of. Corporate giants, rigid hierarchies, a world where profit often eclipsed purpose. Could she truly thrive in such an environment? Could she maintain her core values, her commitment to helping others, within the gleaming, formidable structure of a multinational corporation? Mr. Sterling, sensing her hesitation, approached her again, a look of genuine understanding in his eyes. "Miss Lopez," he said, his voice softer now, "I assure you, this isn't merely an act of appeasement. Today was a wake-up call for me and for the entire Sterling Corporation. We've become disconnected from the very human element that drives innovation and genuine progress. Your actions today reminded us of that." He paused, then continued. "The position I'm offering you is not about processing invoices or sorting mail. It's about bridging the gap between our resources and real-world needs. You would be working directly within a newly formed division dedicated to global logistics for humanitarian aid. Think of it as a specialized rapid response unit for the Sterling Foundation's partnership with GREC." He painted a picture that resonated deeply with Maya. A role where her street-smart navigation skills, her understanding of logistics from her delivery job, and her inherent empathy for those in need could be channeled into something truly impactful. She wouldn't be lost in a sea of corporate bureaucracy. She would be at the forefront of a vital, new initiative. You'd be identifying critical needs, coordinating global shipments of aid, working with on-the-ground teams, ensuring that what happened today, a life-saving package being held up by mere protocol, never happens again, Mr. Sterling explained. Your unique perspective, having experienced the urgency firsthand, would be invaluable. The words clicked into place. This wasn't just a desk job. It was a mission, a continuation of the very work she was passionate about, but with resources she could only dream of. The ability to pursue her nursing education without the crushing weight of financial strain was a powerful incentive, but the chance to be a part of something truly meaningful, to directly contribute to saving lives on a larger scale, sealed the deal. I accept, Mr. Sterling, Maya said, her voice stronger now, imbued with a fresh sense of purpose. A genuine smile touched his lips. Excellent, Miss Lopez. Welcome to Sterling. The immediate aftermath was a blur of activity. Mr. Sterling's executive assistant, Ms. Davies, a woman whose efficiency seemed to border on the supernatural, materialized at his side. She handed him a tablet, already displaying flight manifests and updated delivery schedules for the antitoxin. The private jet, indeed, was preparing for immediate departure. Within minutes, Maya watched as a specialized courier, dispatched by Sterling's private security, carefully secured the repackaged antitoxin for its expedited journey to Peru. The sense of urgency that had propelled her through the city now propelled a multinational corporation. Later that evening, after the last of the board members had departed, their faces still etched with a mixture of introspection and humility, Mr. Sterling personally escorted Maya out of the Sterling Tower. The revolving doors, which had initially been a barrier, now felt like a gateway. Miss Lopez, he said as they stood on the quiet pavement, the city lights twinkling around them. Ms. Davies will be in touch tomorrow morning to formalize your offer and discuss your onboarding. Your start date can be as soon as you're ready. And please, consider your delivery uniform an optional part of your attire from now on. A faint, knowing smirk played on his lips. Maya actually laughed, a rare, genuine sound that surprised even herself. Thank you, Mr. Sterling. Truly. No, Miss Lopez, he replied, his gaze distant, as if looking beyond the skyscrapers to a broader horizon. Thank you. You reminded us of our humanity. With a nod, he turned and re-entered his tower, leaving Maya alone on the sidewalk, the city now feeling less daunting, more full of possibilities. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Maya gave notice at her delivery job, the owner surprisingly understanding when she explained the unprecedented opportunity. She met with Miss Davies, a formidable but surprisingly kind woman who guided her through the onboarding process with a blend of corporate precision and genuine excitement for the new initiative. Maya learned about the vast global network of the Sterling Corporation, its incredible logistical capabilities, and the philanthropic arm that Mr. Sterling was now so determined to expand. Her new office, though modest by Sterling standards, felt like a palace compared to her tiny apartment. It had a large monitor, direct lines of communication to Grec's international teams, and access to data that could track aid shipments across continents. She spent her first few weeks immersing herself in the complexities of global supply chains, understanding the nuances of customs regulations, and learning about the specific needs of communities in crisis zones around the world. It was overwhelming, exhilarating, and deeply fulfilling. She discovered that Mr. Sterling was true to his word. The dedicated fund for humanitarian aid was established with astonishing speed, and the partnership with Grec blossomed. Maya found herself in daily communication with Dr. Sharma, the very woman who had made that desperate call, now a close collaborator. They were building something new, something that would prevent future tragedies, cutting through red tape with the financial and logistical might of the Sterling Corporation behind them. Maya, the former delivery driver, was now at the heart of it all, a vital cog in a machine dedicated to global good. The polished corridors of the Sterling Tower, once alien and intimidating, slowly began to feel less like a labyrinth and more like a challenging new landscape for Maya. Her small, well-lit office, with its panoramic view of the city, became her command center. Gone were the days of battling snarled traffic. Now, her battles were fought on spreadsheets, through international conference calls, and across time zones. The cardboard box that had once been her entire world had been replaced by digital manifests and complex logistical charts. Her first few months were a steep learning curve. The sheer scale of Sterling Corporation's operations was breathtaking. She wasn't just delivering a single package anymore. She was helping to orchestrate the movement of tons of medical supplies, emergency food rations, and crucial equipment to disaster zones and remote clinics worldwide. Every day presented a new puzzle, navigating intricate customs regulations in war-torn regions, finding reliable transport in areas with no infrastructure, or securing rare medications from reluctant manufacturers. One of her biggest challenges came early on when a powerful earthquake devastated a remote island nation. Maya was tasked with coordinating the immediate airlift of water purification tablets and emergency shelter kits. The local infrastructure was obliterated, and the island's small airport was severely damaged. Traditional cargo planes couldn't land. "We're stuck," a veteran logistics manager, Frank, grumbled during a crisis meeting. Frank, a gruff man with decades of experience, had initially been skeptical of Maya, viewing her as an inexperienced newcomer. No runway access for anything large enough. Sending small planes means multiple trips, massive delays, and costs that'll blow our budget. Maya, however, remembered the small Grek plane that had saved Lily. "What about smaller specialized aircraft?" she ventured, recalling her research into various humanitarian transport methods. "STOL aircraft? Or even military-grade short takeoff planes? Can Sterling leverage any contacts for that?" Frank raised an eyebrow, a flicker of surprise in his usually cynical eyes. "STOL? We're not running a Bush airline, Lopez, but it's worth looking into. We do have some unconventional contacts through our mining division in remote areas." That brief exchange marked a turning point in her relationship with Frank. He saw that she thought differently, that her street smarts from her delivery days translated into unconventional problem solving. Over the following weeks, he became an unlikely mentor. He taught her the intricacies of freight forwarding, the dark art of negotiating shipping rates, and the subtle politics of international aid. In return, Maya showed him how to streamline digital tracking systems and introduced him to new nimble ground delivery networks she'd encountered as a driver. Their desks became a collaborative mess of maps, data, and coffee cups. Her relationship with Penelope Albright, however, remained icy. Mrs. Albright, though outwardly compliant with Mr. Sterling's new directives, maintained a cool, distant demeanor towards Maya. There was no open hostility, but an unspoken resentment lingered. Maya often caught Mrs. Albright's gaze across the lobby, a look of guarded disapproval, a silent reminder of the day her carefully constructed world of rules had been so spectacularly upended. Maya chose to focus on her work, knowing that her actions spoke louder than any lingering animosity. A more surprising connection blossomed with Mr. Sterling himself. He would often call her directly, not through his assistant, to inquire about specific projects or simply to commend her on a successful delivery. He didn't just see her as an employee. He saw her as a kindred spirit, someone who understood the profound impact of their work. During one late-night call about a critical vaccine shipment to a remote African village, he spoke with a rare, quiet passion. "You know, Miss Lopez," he said, his voice softer than usual, "after Lily's incident, I realized that true power isn't about accumulating wealth. It's about using that wealth to make a tangible difference. It's about taking away helplessness." Maya listened, understanding the unspoken weight of his words. "It's about bridging the gap, sir," she responded, "between what's possible and what's desperately needed." "Precisely," he said, and Maya could almost hear him smile. "You possess that bridge, Miss Lopez. You remind me every day." These conversations, often brief but always insightful, fueled Maya's dedication. She saw that Mr. Sterling wasn't just a figurehead. He was genuinely committed to this new direction. His vision for the Sterling Foundation went beyond mere philanthropy. It was about leveraging the corporation's vast resources for global good, creating a legacy of impact. Her nursing studies, once a distant dream, were now a tangible reality. The substantial salary from Sterling allowed her to pay for tuition and books without stress. She enrolled in night classes, often arriving directly from the Sterling Tower, still buzzing with the day's logistics challenges. Her professors were impressed by her practical knowledge, often drawing on her real-world experiences to illustrate complex concepts in public health and global medicine. She even started exploring how her logistics knowledge could be applied to healthcare systems, envisioning more efficient ways to deliver care in underserved communities. As the months passed, Maya's confidence soared. She became known within the Sterling Corporation, not just as the delivery driver who made the board kneel, but as a highly competent and indispensable member of the global humanitarian logistics team. Her name appeared on internal reports, her strategies were adopted, and her insights were sought. She was no longer an outsider looking in. She was an integral part of shaping Sterling's new, compassionate identity. The tower, once a symbol of her struggle, was now a launching pad for her dreams, a place where she could truly make a difference, one life-saving shipment at a time. The echoes of that fateful day in the lobby still resonated, but now they were echoes of change, of possibility, and of a future brighter than she had ever dared to imagine. Life within the Sterling Tower had found its rhythm for Maya. The initial shock of her dramatic entry had faded into a quiet respect, and her expertise in global logistics for humanitarian aid was increasingly sought after. She thrived on the challenge, coordinating vital shipments to remote corners of the globe, each successful delivery a silent victory. Her nursing studies progressed, fueled by a newfound financial stability and a deeper understanding of public health needs gained from her daily work. However, the world of a multinational corporation, even one with a newly awakened conscience, was never without its complexities. Maya often found herself navigating the delicate balance between corporate interests and humanitarian imperatives. Richard Sterling's commitment to the Sterling Foundation's partnership with GREC was unwavering. Yet the sprawling empire had many moving parts, and not all of them aligned perfectly with his newfound vision. The first significant test of this came with the discovery of a critical shortage of a specific, high-demand vaccine. An outbreak of a virulent strain of measles was sweeping through several densely populated refugee camps in eastern Africa, threatening to decimate an already vulnerable population. The vaccine, produced by a Sterling subsidiary, Sterling Pharma, was the only effective countermeasure, but global supplies were critically low due to unprecedented demand. Maya's team immediately flagged the emergency. We need to divert a significant portion of the next production run, she argued during a meeting with Sterling Pharma's head of production, Dr. Eleanor Vance. Dr. Vance was a brilliant, no-nonsense scientist, utterly dedicated to her work, but also acutely aware of market demands and shareholder expectations. Ms. Lopez, I understand the urgency, Dr. Vance replied, her voice calm but firm. However, our current production is already allocated. We have binding contracts with governments and other large-scale buyers. Diverting a significant portion would mean breaching those contracts, incurring massive penalties, and potentially jeopardizing future partnerships. She gestured to complex charts on a screen showing projected profits and contract obligations. The financial implications for Sterling Pharma would be severe. Maya felt a familiar knot tighten in her stomach. This was the exact kind of cold, calculated logic she had feared. Dr. Vance, we're talking about a measles outbreak in refugee camps. Hundreds, potentially thousands of lives are at stake. These are children who have already lost everything. And those other contracts are for millions of children who are at risk in other parts of the world, Dr. Vance countered, Rizdi, her gaze unwavering. Our responsibility extends to all our clients. We simply cannot sacrifice our commitments to some for the sake of others, no matter how dire the immediate need. The argument escalated over the following days. Maya brought it to Mr. Sterling, who listened intently, his expression grave. He understood the moral imperative, but also the corporate realities. Sterling Pharma was a publicly traded company. Its value depended on its ability to fulfill its contracts and generate profits. Breaching them could lead to a shareholder revolt, a plunge in stock prices, and potentially destabilize the very foundation he was trying to build for humanitarian efforts. Eleanor is right about the legal and financial repercussions, Mr. Sterling admitted, rubbing his temples. It's not as simple as just redirecting the supply. There are precedents, market trust, investor confidence. But what about human lives, sir? Maya pressed, her voice unwavering. What about the precedent that a company with the power to save lives chooses profit over people? She reminded him of Lily, of the promise he had made. This was the crossroads. Maya knew that if Sterling, with all its resources, couldn't prioritize this immediate desperate need, then their newfound commitment to humanitarian aid was fundamentally flawed. It wasn't just about saving lives. It was about defining their identity. The tension within Sterling Tower mounted. Board members, including a quietly observant Penelope Albright, were divided. Some argued for upholding contracts at all costs, fearing the financial fallout. Others, swayed by the moral argument and Mr. Sterling's quiet conviction, pushed for a solution. Ultimately, Mr. Sterling called a special board meeting. It was a tense affair, filled with heated debate and the cold reality of corporate law. Maya was present, at Mr. Sterling's insistence, to present the ground-level reports from GREC, detailing the horrifying spread of the measles. She spoke with a quiet intensity, painting a vivid picture of the suffering, not with emotional pleas, but with raw data and the grim prognosis from field doctors. After hours of deliberation, Mr. Sterling made his decision. "We will not breach our existing contracts," he announced, much to Maya's disappointment. A wave of relief washed over Dr. Vance and some of the other board members. "However," he continued, his voice firm, "we will explore every other possible avenue. Sterling Corporation will purchase the necessary volume of this vaccine from any available source at market price, regardless of cost. We will then, through the Sterling Foundation, donate it directly to GREC for immediate deployment to the affected camps." A collective gasp went through the room. Purchasing from competitors at potentially exorbitant prices would eat into profits, but it wouldn't violate existing contracts. It was a costly compromise, a solution that satisfied legal obligations while still upholding the moral imperative. "This is an unprecedented financial commitment," one board member murmured. "This is the cost of our humanity," Mr. Sterling countered, his gaze firm. "This is the price of redemption. Miss Lopez, work with Dr. Vance. Identify every single available batch anywhere in the world. Sterling will acquire it." Maya felt a surge of respect and relief. It wasn't the direct diversion she had hoped for, but it was a powerful, uncompromising commitment. Dr. Vance, though initially wary of the financial implications, now looked at Maya with a newfound appreciation for her relentless advocacy. The immediate crisis was still immense, but Sterling was now fully committed to a solution. The following weeks were a blur of frantic international negotiations. Maya and Dr. Vance, once on opposing sides, became an unlikely, formidable team. Dr. Vance used her deep industry contacts, while Maya leveraged GREC's global network and her own nascent understanding of clandestine logistics. They scoured the world, tracking down limited batches of the vaccine, sometimes paying astronomical prices, but ensuring that every vial was secured. It was a stark reminder that even within the halls of corporate power, the fight for what was right was never simple. There were always compromises, always calculations, always competing interests. But Maya had learned that true leadership wasn't just about making the easy choices. It was about finding the difficult, often costly path to do what was necessary. And in Mr. Sterling, she saw a leader evolving, willing to pay the price for his conscience. The containment of the measles outbreak in Eastern Africa was a monumental victory, a testament to what could be achieved when corporate power was wielded with genuine compassion. It was a defining moment for Sterling Corporation, but even more so for Maya. The crisis, and her pivotal role in navigating it, had not only solidified her position within the company, but had also cemented her belief in the transformative potential of her work. The Sterling Tower was no longer just a place of employment. It was a crucible where her unique skills and unwavering principles were forged into something truly impactful. In the years that followed, Maya became an indispensable architect of the Sterling Foundation's humanitarian efforts. The initial Global Logistics for Humanitarian Aid division, once a nascent idea born from a moment of crisis, blossomed into a robust, highly efficient department under her influence. She designed and implemented innovative supply chain solutions, leveraging Sterling's vast global network to ensure that medical supplies, emergency relief, and educational resources reached communities in need faster and more reliably than ever before. Her past life as a delivery driver, a seemingly humble beginning, had given her an unparalleled understanding of ground-level realities, enabling her to foresee obstacles and devise solutions that corporate veterans often overlooked. Her relationship with Frank, the gruff logistics manager, evolved into a strong professional camaraderie. He had become her most steadfast ally, a sounding board for her audacious ideas, and a fierce protector of her initiatives within the more traditional corporate structure. Their shared successes, from coordinating disaster relief in the Caribbean to establishing mobile clinics in rural Asia, built a bond of mutual respect. He still grumbled, but now it was a fond grumble, usually followed by a reluctant nod of approval for her latest, seemingly impossible plan. Dr. Eleanor Vance, initially Maya's adversary, became an unexpected intellectual sparring partner and, eventually, a collaborator. The measles crisis had opened Dr. Vance's eyes to the ethical dimensions of pharmaceutical distribution, pushing her to advocate for more agile, compassionate strategies within Sterling Pharma. She and Maya co-authored groundbreaking white papers on ethical supply chain management in global health crises, becoming a formidable duo, challenging industry norms and driving change from within. Their shared passion for efficient, life-saving solutions transcended their initial corporate and humanitarian divides. Penelope Albright remained a distant figure, her initial hostility having transmuted into a grudging, if still cool, acknowledgement. She never directly engaged with Maya on a personal level, but Maya noticed subtle shifts. During board meetings, Mrs. Albright no longer overtly questioned humanitarian initiatives. Instead, she would sometimes offer a quiet, practical suggestion for efficiency. It was a slow, almost imperceptible thawing, a testament to the quiet power of demonstrated impact. Maya's personal dream, her nursing education, also flourished. The financial security provided by Sterling allowed her to fully dedicate herself to her studies, graduating with honors from her nursing program. While she continued her pivotal role at Sterling, she began to volunteer her nursing skills at a local community clinic in Brooklyn on weekends, returning to the hands-on patient care that had initially drawn her to the field. It was there, administering vaccines to children or providing basic health screenings, that she found a profound sense of balance, connecting her high-level logistical work to the individual lives it ultimately impacted. She was no longer just facilitating care, she was directly providing it. Richard Sterling, her unlikely champion, became more than just her CEO. He was a mentor and a friend. He continued to call her personally, often late in the evenings, to discuss not just projects, but broader visions for the Sterling Foundation. He saw in Maya the embodiment of the new legacy he sought to build for his company, a legacy rooted not just in profit, but in purpose. He tasked her with leading discussions on sustainable development in vulnerable communities, pushing the boundaries of corporate philanthropy beyond traditional aid. One crisp autumn evening, 5 years after her dramatic entrance, Maya found herself standing on the observation deck of the Sterling Tower, looking out at the glittering expanse of New York City. Below, the urban sprawl hummed with life, a stark contrast to the quiet solitude of her current vantage point. Mr. Sterling joined her, a rare, relaxed smile on his face. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" he said, gazing out at the city. "It is," Maya agreed, her eyes reflecting the city lights. "It always felt so big, so impossible before. Now it feels like home," he finished for her, understanding. "You've made it your own, Miss Lopez. You've made Sterling your own. You came here with a simple package, a life in your hands, and you left an indelible mark, not just on this building, but on how we view our place in the world." He turned to her, his expression warm. "Lily is graduating high school next year. She's interested in global health, believe it or not. She still remembers the story of the brave delivery person who saved her life." Maya smiled, a gentle, humble smile. "I'm just glad I could help, sir." "You did more than help, Maya," he said, using her first name, a subtle but significant shift in their dynamic. "You reminded us of our humanity. You reminded me that true leadership isn't just about the bottom line, but about the impact we leave behind." The Sterling Foundation, under Maya's guidance and Mr. Taya Sterling's unwavering support, grew into a global force for good. Its name, once associated primarily with corporate dominance, now stood as a beacon of humanitarian action. They built partnerships with governments, NGOs, and local communities, creating sustainable solutions to complex global challenges. And at the heart of it all was Maya, the former delivery driver, whose defiant act in a grand lobby had sparked a revolution of compassion. She had begun her journey fighting against the walls of bureaucracy, desperate to save one life. Now she was building bridges, saving countless lives, and proving that sometimes the most profound changes begin with the simplest, most courageous acts. The Sterling Tower, once an impenetrable fortress, had indeed become a launching pad, not just for her dreams, but for a legacy forged in the fires of empathy and unwavering purpose.